Happy New York Wednesday. It is April Fool's Day. This is the Let's Go Mets podcast, episode 2. Happy Finch Day, everybody. Sid Finch, one of the greatest, or maybe the greatest April Fool's Day prank done by the media, Sports Illustrated. An article by George Plimpton. Yeah, that, if anybody remembers magazines on newsstands, that's what they did back in the day in 1985. Not like today where we have digital media, 24/7, 365 news cycles. No. They had magazines, and it came out weekly. So back in early 1985, managing editor of Sports Illustrated, Mark Mulvoy, realized that April 1, April Fool's Day, fell on one of those cover issue dates when they would release the magazine. But now, if you remember back then, back in the mid-'80s, they didn't really release it on April 1. They usually released it a week prior. I really don't know why they did that, but, they did that. I just went along with it. I was only about 6, 7 years old at the time, so I don't really remember about it. I remember hearing about Sid Finch. Didn't really know about that story till later in life, as one of the greatest or the greatest April Fool's Day prank. So Mark Mulvoy, the managing editor of Sports Illustrated, asked George Plimpton, legendary sports writer, to write an article for like kind of an April Fool's Day joke, but he really didn't know what to write. So basically, the managing editor of Sports Illustrated just gave him permission to create his own hoax. And what did he create? The legendary Hayden Siddhartha Sid Finch, a rookie baseball pitcher in training with the New York Mets. Yes, the 1985 New York Mets. That's when Darryl Strawberry was making a name for himself, Doc Gooden, Gary Carter, trading for Gary Carter, Lenny Dykstra. Yeah, you remember those New York Mets? Yeah, the 86 world champion New York Mets. A lot of them are on that 1985 team. To create this hoax where he only wore one shoe, a heavy hiker's boot, when pitching. All right, if that wasn't your first clue about an April Fool's Day hoax, as you're reading on this article, Finch, not only did he only wear one shoe, but he never played baseball before, attempting to decide between a sports career or playing a French horn. So the story gets wilder in this article. And what's astonishing about Finch was that he could pitch a fastball at 168 miles per hour. Yeah. That will catch your attention as you're reading this article. And, for those that actually did read this article, anybody that's watching or listening in to this podcast, did you really actually believe that? Was this something that you just heard with some water cooler talk back in the day, back in the mid-'80s, when your coworker just said, hey, this is a guy named Sid Finch. He throws 168 miles per hour, I swear to you. Well, where'd you hear that? Sports Illustrated. Check it out. And by the way, what a way to sell magazines. I mean, heck, we didn't have Twitter back then, text messages, or even call waiting. I mean, when you called somebody on the phone, you used a little rotary dial. Hey, you're about Sid Finch? This guy throws faster than Tom Seaver. And the scouting reports gave him the Mets scouting reports gave him like 9s and 8s, highest on the scale. And it was also, for all you metric folks, those 270 kilometers per hour. Pinpoint accuracy without needing a warm-up. All right, if he doesn't need a warm-up, eventually he's going to have Tommy John surgery. Anyway, so according to George Plimpton, Finch grew up in an English orphanage and was adopted by an archaeologist who later died in a plane crash in Nepal. I mean, the story just gets more ridiculous. And after briefly attending Harvard University, he went to Tibet, learned some mastery of mind, body, and that's where the source of his pitching prowess came from, and he decided to pursue baseball instead of playing the French Quarter golf or something like that, right? And of course, there's photographs of this guy. So, of course, SI really, really did their due diligence in trying to make this believable. So there's photographs of this guy, Sid Finch, and they recruited the SI photographer Lane Stewart recruited his friend Joe Burton, who was a junior high art teacher in Oak Park, Illinois, to portray as Finch. Burton posed as Finch for photographs, but his face was averted from the lens. So that should give you another clue that this story is like hashtag fake news. And Burton stood at 6'4" and wore a size 14 shoe. And probably wore one shoe, in this magazine article, I'm assuming. But yeah, so that's how the story goes. And, was it believable? Was it something that you fell for? Or apparently that happened in 1985 when the story was released in late of March 1985. Mets fans overjoyed that they found their player. They found their guy. Not that Doc Gooden was good enough or any of these guys in the Mets lineup back in 1985. They were overjoyed. And apparently a lot of people fell for the prank to the point where I guess other newspapers, other beat writers apparently were complaining to Mets PR director for letting them have the story, I guess, if I'm reading that right. And two general managers actually called the commissioner of baseball about Finch. So he had GMs, a couple GMs actually falling for this, seeing if this story is true or not. And then a reporter was sent to find Finch, and a radio talk show host claimed that he actually did see Finch pitch. Now that's pretty funny. So Finch had a locker between George Foster and Darryl Strawberry. Local, actually, CBS, NBC, ABC, and local newspapers were sent to a press conference about Finch. And then on April 2nd, in a press conference, Joe Burton, the guy that was portraying as Finch, said he was retiring. And then eventually it was announced on April 15th, tax day, that the whole story was a hoax. How great is that? How great is that? You fooled the entire sports world media to look into the story. That is pretty funny. It's like, happy April Fools. That pretty much went on for a couple weeks, right? And I want to ask Mets fans out there that were following this back in 1985, were you actually fooled by this? 160 plus mile per hour fastball? Were you thinking of Finch and Gooden as a 1-2? Forget about Ron Darling. Forget about Sid Fernandez, El Cid, or Roger McDowell, or Jesse Orozco in the bullpen. Forget about them. You got Sid Finch, 168 mile per hour fastball with one shoe. That's pretty funny. So every time it's April 1st, it's Happy Sid Finch Day. One of the greatest sports prank in the history of sports. I don't know if that could ever be repeated again. Who knows? Well, until next time, Mets fans, let's go Mets.